Hey, I'm Idris Elba, and I've got a big announcement. I'm going to be at this year's Meridian in Madrid. Ain't that right, Danelle?
No hay libros en la biblioteca.
Bueno, think Danelle's busy. Question is, will I see you there?
So I want to share this with you guys. This comes from alp.lsp. He's now alp.web3. You should follow him. This guy deserves all the credit in the world. I mean, he does daily Stellar news. All right. So like I said, Stellar solves the time and money issues that come with traditional cross-border payment methods. You can perform transactions in minutes for fractions of a penny. We know about this, some of this stuff. Stellar also enables you to build amazing applications that leverage the power and reach of the network. That's where I want you guys to focus on this. What are some of these amazing applications? Well, let's introduce one to you. This was recently reported straight from the Stellar Foundation. It says, building developer tools in a cross-chain world, insights from the Cubist co-founders. Now, you may be like, I don't know who these guys are. I'm going to introduce that. Earlier, I think it was today or maybe yesterday, they had a sit down with some guy that you're probably familiar with Stellar. But it says, for instance, welcome to the second episode of season 2 of Tech Talks with Tomer, a video and podcast series hosted by Tomer Weller, Vice President of Product at Stellar Development Foundation. In every episode, Tomer speaks with some of the smartest engineers in blockchain about the biggest innovations happening in space. Now, I've already went ahead and review this. One of the key takeaways I want you to have from this is the background of some of these guys. For instance, they go to Carnegie Mellon, right? And some of these guys are like, I believe, professors, if I'm not mistaken. Why would professors from Carnegie Mellon want to get mixed up with Stellar, right? Well, you probably already have the answer to this. So there's that. There's another thing, right? So we're always talking about like what projects have real world use case. How about this? What projects are solving things at scale that not necessarily scale, but like solving a problem by introducing a solution with utility for that real world problem, right? So it's not necessarily about the scalability issue. I gotta requote myself. That's where I want to introduce this to you. Okay, so with this, you're going to see Tomer chat. I think it's pronounced Tomer. Let me pronounce Tomer. He chats with Fraser Brown and Riyad S. Wabi. They are co-founders of Cubist. Cubist builds security-focused developer tools for multi-chain, cross-chain development in Web3. We're always talking about Web3. Where's Jasmine? You name it, right? Everybody's talking about Web3. This is going to help developers write contracts for multiple chains with the ease of just writing for one. That's one of the key takeaways I want you to have. On top of that, Cubist received a grant through the Stellar Bridge Bounty Program in the fall of 2022. So this is one thing I love about Stellar, right? It's one thing to make news about certain things, but there's another thing like, oh, hey guys, remember this project that was building back in the bear market, the crypto winter of 2022? Hey guys, here's an update. Well, it's just that. Here's an update, right? So they're going to talk about why Cubist bridged with Stellar and how to build securely in a cross-chain environment and developer tooling in blockchain. Now listen to this, like I just mentioned before, both Riyad and Fraser are assistant professors, so not professor, but assistant professor, are you kidding me? At Carnegie Mellon University, in addition to running Cubist. So we're going to watch this. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I fast-forwarded to some of the juicy stuff. All right. So these guys look pretty enthusiastic. I fast-forward to this, and we're going to play roughly, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 minutes of this. There's some key things you should pay attention to, and you got to listen to this. So smash that like if you haven't done so already. I'm going to come out of the frame. Here we go. If you're a big fan of Stellar, you should pay attention to what they have to say. Thank you for joining us here for Crypto Talk Now. Here we go.
So maybe you can give us just a high-level quick overview on like what Cubist actually is.
Oh, do I get to do that? Okay. Let's see. So we think of ourselves as just like sort of building developer tools for like secure and productive development in Web3. So that's a super high level thing. So what does that really mean? So the kind of the first product, the first thing that we really thought hard about was a software development kit that lets you think about your distributed application as if it runs on a single chain, even if it runs across many different chains, including off-chain code, et cetera. So, I think if you look at the way that folks build like multi-chain apps today, there's a lot of mixing of layers of abstraction. So, let's say if I'm running on, I'm going to work with Sorbonne, and I'm going to work with Ethereum, and I'm going to work with, Avalanche, whatever. I'm going to work with like 3 or 4 different chains. And I start by writing my application on each chain, and then like thinking at a really low level about like how the bits and bytes flow from like chain A to chain B to chain C. And then maybe I, jump in and use some provider who like actually gives me the bridging connections between the chains. But as soon as I do that, like the actual way, like mechanically, what I do when I like pull in, bridge provider X is I go and I get their code, which is like, if I'm on Ethereum, it's like a Solidity based contract, and I inherit from that code. And so that means that I basically just have pulled their code base into my code base, right? So at the end, what I have now is an application where all of my logic is totally mixed with all of the logic of the bridging implementation. And so now I'm kind of stuck, right? Because if I want to say switch bridge providers, or if I need a different bridge provider because I need a different connection that my first provider didn't give me, then well, I get to rewrite a bunch of code, or I get to throw things away, or whatever, right? So that's kind of a weird thing, right? It's if we're talking Web 2, like if I build a web app, like I don't start by implementing TCP and then like go from there, right? Or maybe some people do. I love TCP, but but that, like, people would look at you like you were crazy, and yet that's basically the status quo. So we said, okay, look, there are techniques for handling this sort of thing. There's like, and this is where I should shut up and let Fraser talk, because she's the one that actually like really designed this piece of the system. But basically the idea is, look, you describe where your code runs, and the SDK figures out how to connect those things together. And it's like there are patterns of the way that these things interconnect. And like your code gives enough information for us or for the SDK to generate those connections, without your having to do it. So that means that what you end up with is an application where, if you really kind of think about it as all running on one chain, it's just like, here's the logic, and here are the pieces, and here's how they talk to one another. And then, oh, by the way, in my configuration file, I can say this one runs on chain A, this one runs on chain B, this one runs on chain C, and here's my bridging provider between them. And like all of that low-level weirdness that doesn't have anything to do with your application's logic, all of that gets generated automatically.
And the nice thing about code generation in this situation is it's actually a lot easier to get right and to prove right. So if you're coming at this from a sort of verification perspective, where you're like, okay, I want to prove that my application does the right thing. If you're looking at a bunch of different applications that all use existing bridge provider code and then intermix that with their application logic, like actually proving those applications correct is going to be really, really hard. Right? You're gonna, like, every single thing will look different. That's never good for the people. But if you're actually just generating code, that's one pattern, that's one pipeline. Like, there's so much less that you actually have to prove correct if you're trying to get an end-to-end guarantee. So that's one reason I really like this code gen approach. Aside from all the things, that it makes easier for the user, it also actually makes things more correct.
So I am curious, Fraser, from your perspective, you spend most of your professional life in non-blockchain land. And coming from that background, how is the experience of onboarding into the world of blockchain in terms of, from your angle of, the type of tools that are available for software developers?
That's such a fun question. Okay, so there are 2 parts, I would say. One bad, one good. The thing that is cool is, at least in like the smart contract area, people use a lot more heavyweight of correctness tools than they tend to in normal software development. Just because the code is so critical and it's quite small typically. So you're actually looking at a case where verification is both tractable and reasonable to do, right? Like, on the other hand, if I'm just some dude writing some random web app, like a calculator, okay, probably it doesn't need to be verified. If I'm writing a smart contract, okay, now I'm very motivated to actually verify that code. So one thing I think is really cool is all the both academic and industrial options for heavier weight techniques, like formal verification, like symbolic execution. That's really cool to see. I've actually used some of these tools. We had to write a smart contract for one of our other products, and I used Sartora's prover to verify it. It was so fun. So yeah, yay. I mean, you really wouldn't find that in any other area. On the bad side, like, so typically programming languages, like, okay, they don't have the best presentation of their own semantics often, but man, like, trying to figure out certain solidity semantics is really tough. People seem like the day-to-day development experience in everything from like what are the semantics of the language to what tools am I going to use to what's my like CI/CD pipeline, all of that stuff seems really less good than their Web 2 alternatives. So on the one hand, we have like amazing verification tools, and on the other hand, it's like way harder to just test your stuff or like figure out what the language is telling you it does. So I find that paradox very interesting.
Well, to be honest, I'm surprised that there was a good part to that answer. So that was already better than I expected. Yeah, tooling and blockchain. There's a lot.
It's bleak. It's bleak, right?
But you're also in this position where you have visibility into the guts of several blockchain platforms because you support more than one blockchain, and you're really in the guts of these smart contract runtimes. So how is the variance between the different platforms? Obviously Soroban is the gold standard, but tell me a bit about about the rest of the space.
Actually, Riyadh, you start. I want to think a little more about.
Yeah, and it's okay to talk shit. We don't. Our view audience is very small. Yeah.
This one's going to blow up. I have a feeling we're gonna say just the right words. No, okay. So my perspective is obviously a bit different than Fraser's, but just the way that frequently I've looked at these different. The guts of these different VMs is from the perspective of how are we interacting with them? Like, what am I like as the if I'm a remote node and I'm making queries, this sort of thing. And so just like a slightly different thing. There, the variation is just incredible, right? So on the one hand, you have smart contract platforms where there's like super weird semantics of like how you. I'm trying to think of a polite example here. So there's a well-known blockchain where there's sort of this weird idea that you're like kind of pulling in pieces of system code, but until recently, those pieces of system code were not actually, validated as like the system code. So like you can think about this as basically like, yeah, your operating system, except any user space process can just like write over the code in the operating system. So like, wow, okay. So there was like a little bit of a missed connection there, right? So I think there has been a little bit of this kind of thing where it's like, well, each of these VMs is kind of an operating system, or roughly a processor and really low level guts of an operating system. And some of them have been really carefully thought out. Here I'm thinking of Soroban, and some of them have sort of grown like kudzu or ivy, and sometimes that ivy grows over and hides a really nasty rock. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's like when you interact with these machines, you kind of see like the ethos of the developer, and sometimes that ethos is like, well, we're going to be very careful about how each piece talks to each other piece, and sometimes, unfortunately, that ethos is more like, well, okay, next we need this thing, let's do it this way. Okay, next we need this other thing, let's do it this way. And so, you can end up with a little bit of a grab bag, and sometimes the grab bag is full of knives.
I want to show some key highlights that we have here in regards to Cubist, because you may be wondering, like, why put so much emphasis on this? All right, so dating back to this particular article from April 18th, all right, this actually comes straight from them. And like it says, it's here. It says, we have officially launched our non-custodial key manager. And I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit more, actually. All right. So, yeah, their non-custodial key manager to help Web3 infrastructure teams secure and, manage secret keys. Our chain agnostic platform, again, chain agnostic platform, that in itself is pretty significant, provides hardware-backed storage and signing for staking deposits, validations, and withdrawals. Now, of course, this is a thread about this. It says, without a streamlined key management solution, teams have had to store secret keys on servers or go through enormous effort to piece together vaults and signers. Were you aware of that? Both arrangements allow direct access to raw keys, meaning a breach or insider threat could result in serious loss. Now, listen to this. On the tail of Ethereum's Shanghai upgrade, they, as in Cubist, aim to create a new standard for validator security. The unique design of their key management platform combines their team's world-renowned academic research across system security, verification, and cryptography. I mean, this is a standout project that is built on what, guys? It's built on Stellar. So, a while back, we put so much emphasis on, Sarabon. You even saw, for instance, Richard Common Sense Crypto. He covered it quite a bit as well. This thing with Cubist is definitely worth taking note for, because they have built the infrastructure to tackle some real world use case problems that need to be simply tackled or addressed, right? Like, do they have a solution? Well, look at this. Their solution safeguards infrastructure keys with secure hardware and uses short-lived privileges to sign transactions and validation messages within the bounds of programmable policies. Cubist provides anti-slashing protection, anomaly alerts, and audit trails out of the box. They design their key management platform following a single principle. Treat everything as untrusted. For instance, like with Quant, you hear Gilbert Verdian always talking about, like, let's create the internet of trust. Okay, well, we're creating that, or you guys are trying to create that, obviously, with your connections with, IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force that dates back to the 1980s. But this is a good approach, because you cannot assume that anything could be trusted. So they have to treat everything as untrusted. Even if an organization's systems are hacked, the key manager can prevent an attacker from signing malicious withdrawal transactions of validation messages. By developing the solution, stakers, providers, blockchains, and other validator operators get the highest security assurance of any key management platform on the market. No one, including Cubist, can see, copy, or steal the raw secret keys. That is crucial. So when we're talking about things about, we want the institutional money coming in. Institutional money wants to be convinced not just about clarity, but you have the security to back that up. Enter in Cubist, a project built on Stellar, right? How about this? Migrate from existing key stores to Cubist hardware-backed storage without ever giving access to raw keys, and integrate quickly using their interfaces for popular validator clients. Of course, you can learn more by going to this particular link. But yeah, they did just that. They had this thing about launching this key management platform. So this is cool stuff. I'm glad to be able to share this with you on a video format to give you kind of like a little gist of who these guys are about. But it's nice to get updates from Stellar themselves, I should say, in regards to, a project that's built on Stellar, and then finally get an update, because, it's like some people have criticized Stellar for doing this in the past. Maybe it's somewhat warranted. I'm not going to completely agree with it all. And that is, you guys have, greenlit this project to be built on Stellar, and then we get no update. Stellar has definitely been killing it lately when it comes to getting more updates in that regards out to the community and so on. A lot of stuff flies under the radar. Let's admit that. But this one definitely solves a real problem with real world use case, and it's built on Stellar. That's pretty big. I don't see any other projects that have any competition to, for instance, Cubist and what they're trying to solve. that in itself, we talk about supply and demand. There's going to be a lot of demand for this, if you will. So we'll have to pay more attention about it and so on. But glad to share that with you guys. And let's face it, it's Stellar news. Who doesn't want to be excited about Stellar news? It doesn't, you don't get news about Stellar every single day.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have not yet subscribed, do yourself a favor and subscribe for more information on the ISO 222 compliant tokens, and hit the notification bell to make sure that you are aware of the new videos when they come up. Max and I cover these ISOs, and we also have a live show every single night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you tune in for that. You won't want to miss it. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next video.